Alright, so in the last video, we typed in pretty much all of this code right here. We started off by checking to see if any of our dice had a value of 1. And more specifically, in these condition statements, the first check was to see if they both contained a 1. And in the second check, it was to see if either or contained a 1. Now keeping in mind that if we only have one dice, die 2 is going to always equal 0. So this first one, although it will check it, it will never get executed if we only have one dice. The second one, however, could and will get executed if a 1 is hit, regardless if we have a single dice or 2 dice. Alright, so if we come in here and they're both equal to 1, we have to do two things based on the instructions. One is we have to reset the scores to 0, and we want into the scores array list, use the set function. It takes two arguments, first one being the index, which J is the current index, because remember J lines up with our players. And the second one is what we want to put at that index, or the value that we want at that index. And in this case 0, because you just lost all your points. Then we print out snake eyes, turn over, and then use this break, which breaks us out of the current loop or the game loop, which is right here. And if you follow that down, you'll see that this is the closing curly bracket, so right out here. And then if there's any other instructions to follow before the end of that loop, it'll go through those. And if not, as long as we're not on the final player, and you already know this because we've gone through the game a few times, once we get to that final player, the game's over, regardless of score right now. But we will fix that. Alright, so moving on. The next thing that we checked was whether die 1 or die 2 had a value of 1. And if so, we printed out you rolled a 1, turn over, and then use that break to break out of the game loop. And you may be asking, well, what about the turn score? Because they're supposed to lose the turn score. And the reason I set this up this way and kind of showing you how to take advantage of this for loop is because right now K is what we're keeping track of our score with. Alright? So if we don't update the scores array list, then it's going to be the same score that we came in with, meaning that no matter how many points we got in this turn, as long as we don't make it down to the hold, which we'll get to here in a minute, it's not going to update that scores array list. So technically, that's the same as losing your turn points. Alright, hopefully that makes sense to you. Alright, so then if we don't hit a 1, that means we can continue our turn. So we need to prompt the user to see if they want to roll or hold. And we do that with a do while loop. That's my preferred way of doing it. And it's basically the same thing that we did up here. Or here we forced them to give us an R. And all we did was let them continue on with the program as soon as they did. I mean, technically we could take that out and it would just roll the dice on the first one and wouldn't give them the option. But we pause for just a minute to let them, have a little bit more control. Okay. So down here, the only thing we did was we changed this to say, do you want to roll or hold? And we added a couple more conditions down here to look for to see if we pressed it. And that's a lowercase h and uppercase H. We're reusing C because it's not in use right now. And as I said earlier in this series of videos, when you're coding, to me, the best coding is to get the stuff to work with as few characters as possible and as few lines of code as you can, but to get it to work right, get it to work the way you want to. And I said I would have this under 100 at the end, and you can see it looks like we're up to 103, but once I start pulling all these line feeds out, right in here, you'll see we'll probably be down around 70 tops. All right, so once I come out of this do while loop, the next thing I want to do is I've got to check the H at a minimum. All right, because I have to do something if they hit H. And technically, I don't have to do anything if they hit R, because if they hit R and I don't tell it to do anything, as long as, and you have to remember this is the best part about a for loop, as long as K is less than win score, we're going to keep going through that loop unless I tell it to do something. So I don't have to tell it to do anything for R. If we hit R, it's going to go right through that loop again because I haven't told it to do anything. All right, so if C is equal to lowercase or uppercase h, we're going to go into that scores array list and we're going to set J, and if you remember right, just like I talked about up here, which is the current position that we're on, we're going to set that to K plus die 1 plus die 2. All right, and if you're asking yourself, why not just K? Well, remember, K doesn't get updated until the top of the loop, or the bottom of the loop, however you want to look at it. But in other words, everything's got to run in that loop before it gets updated. So you're not actually adding die 1 and die 2 to K until the loop is finished. And at this point, it's not finished. All right, so if you came in with 0, for example, all right, so K is equal to 0, and you roll a 3 and a 6 for a 9. And you get down to this point because K, like I said, this hasn't even been affected yet. So K is still 0 by the time you get down here. So if you add K to the 3 and the 9, of course 0 plus 3 plus 9 is 9. And you're putting that into the scores array list. All right, and that's if we hold. Now if we didn't add the die in there, you would just get 0. And that's not what we want. All right, and then you break out just like you did up here and continue on with your code. And that's where we're going right now. Because what I want to do is I want to loop back around to that first player. Because this game is horrible right now because it ends and nobody makes it to 100, so I want it to go back to the first player and we can play until somebody hits 100. So to do that, I'm going to type in some more condition statements down here below the game loop. All right, so it's going to be within the player's loop. We're going to check for two things. One, did we win the game? In other words, is the points accumulated on the current roller enough to win the game? And if so, I want to let them know that they won the game. And if not, then I want to go to the next player. So let me go ahead and type those in. All right, so this should be pretty simple to understand. So we're down here underneath the game loop. So I'm saying if scores.getJ is greater than or equal to win score or 100. All right, and remember, if we held scores.setJ, which we're setting here before we get to this point, so by the time we get here, it's going to be whatever value we set there is going to be this value. So if it's greater than or equal to 100, we want to print out, congratulations, you won. All right. And then, of course, break out of the game. But if it's not, so if nobody's won the game, then we want to check to see if j is equal to players.size minus 1. And if you're wondering why minus 1, if we go back up to the top of our players loop, remember we got j, as long as j is less than players.size, we're going to go through this. So it's going to go 0, 1, 2, 3. And then when it gets to 4, which is actually players.size, and it's not less than anymore, it's going to break the loop. So it's not going to go through there with the number 4, which is what size the players.size is. So by subtracting 1 on number 3, we come down here, okay, 3 is equal to 3. So we can execute this code in here. And the code is pretty simple. We want to set j equal to -1. And if you're asking yourself, well, why -1? Because the first player is 0. Remember, once we get through all this code here, we do this last little bit of instruction here, which is add 1 to j. So if we set it to 0 down there, then we come out of here, it's going to be 1 because we're going to add 1 to it before we start this next loop. Okay, so you're going to be skipping over that first player or player 0. All right, so by setting it to -1, and then, of course, 1 gets added to it, it is now 0. So we can go back to that first player. All right, so hopefully that makes sense to you. Like I say, nothing but a couple condition statements. I mean, this is programming. It's pretty much what it is. It's a bunch of condition statements and loops. All right, but I started thinking about it, and there's one more thing I want to add in here before we test this game, and that's one more condition up here that I didn't think about at first, and that's that there is another way we're going to exit out of this loop. And that's if basically k plus die1 plus die2 is greater than or equal to the win score. Just like we did down here in a sense. All right, so let me pop that in there. All right, so I'll put another else if in here. So if k plus die1 and die2, because we rolled, is greater than or equal to win score, then we're going to go in here and set the scores to j. Basically the same thing that we did down here. And we're going to set the value to k plus die1 plus die2 and then break. Now you may be asking yourself, well, what if you hit a 1 in there? Well, that's going to be taken care of in the first two if and if else or else if. All right, and then once we get down to this else if, now we're going to check to see if it's greater than or equal to win score. So if we do hit a 1, that's going to be taken care of before we get to that point, so we don't have to worry about any basically bad coding. And you'll see that once the game starts going. All right, and then we break out, of course. And once we break out, we do these two checks down here, and it should loop us around this time. So let's check it out and see if it works. So we hit play. I'm going to say we're playing with 2 dice and 2 players. Actually, let's say 3 players. And we'll do Joseph, Cherish, and Selena. All right, so it's Joseph's turn. We're going to roll, roll, roll. All right, so I'm going to hold on that. And, of course, it doesn't give you the score, but if you add them up, and next time we get to Joseph, you'll be able to see this. So you got a 6 and a 7, which is 13, and 10, which is 23. So when it comes up on his next turn, you see where it tells you it'll say, Joseph, it's your turn. Your current score is, and it should say 23. All right. But let's go ahead and roll on Cherish now. Okay, and she hit a 1, so she's basically lost all her points. So it doesn't affect anything because we haven't set any points in hers yet. So now we're on Selena. All right, and she rolled 3 times, so we'll go ahead and hold on that. All right, and as you can see, Joseph, he has a current score of 23. We're going to roll, 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 hopefully. All right, so we'll hold on that. And once again, if you total up those and add it to his score, that's what his next score should come up as. All right, so we're on Cherish, so we're going to roll, roll. Oh, she hit a 1 again, so we're on Selena. Rolling on Selena, and Selena hit a 1. And as you can see, Joseph has 46 now. So we're going to roll, roll, roll. Oh, he hit a 1. And then we're rolling on, okay, that was Cherish. So we're going to hold on hers. So now she's got some points on the board. And then, of course, Selena has 22, so we're going to roll, roll, roll. She hit a 1. Joseph, oh, he hit a 1. Cherish, going to hold on that. And Selena, it's her turn, so I'm going to roll, roll, roll. Hold on that. She had 22. That'll be more now. Joseph's got 46 still because he hit a 1 last time, and he hit a 1 this time. And Cherish hit a 1, and Selena hit a 1, and Joseph hit a 1. And we're rolling on Cherish now, and she hit a 1. Selena hit a 1. All right, Joseph hit a 1. Look at that. Boy, a lot of 1s coming up. All right, so Cherish, we're going to add those scores right there. She's at 49. Selena hit a 1. Joseph, we're going to hold on that. He was at 46. Let's see, Cherish. Oh, I shouldn't have did that last row. All right, so we're going to hold on that for Selena. And then we're going to roll on Joseph, and he hit a 1. Selena hit a 1, or Cherish hit a 1, I should say. Selena hit a 1. Joseph hit a 1. Boy, a lot of 1s coming up. All right, so you can see how this game could take a while. All right, so she hit a 1. And we're going to hold on Selena. She's at 71, and that just got added to her score. Now, Joseph's at 91, so roll the dice once. 5 and a 3. Now, 5 and 3 is going to put him at 99. All right, so I'm going to hold here. All right. So his next time up, he'll have 99 as long as nobody wins out here. So we're going to Cherish. We're going to roll, 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 and hold. And then Selena. Oh, Selena's got a 93. So I'm going to roll. So she might win this game with this roll. All right, she rolled a 2 and a 3. So I'm going to hold on that. So that puts her at 98. And you can see Joseph has 99. Now here's the thing to think about here. If he rolls a 1, all right, he's going to be kicked out of this loop. And of course, depending if it's 2 1s, he's going to lose all his points. If it's a single 1, he's just going to get kicked out of this turn. But if he doesn't roll a 1, he's going to be put down here because this next roll is going to win for him. So we're going to set his score to whatever and break out of this loop and then go down here and tell him that he won and give him the points that he won, and it should be whatever he rolls plus 99. All right, so let's roll. Wish him luck. Put my cursor back down here. And he rolls a 3 and a 6. Congratulations, Joseph. You won with 108 points. All right, so hopefully you could see kind of how that game went. Took a little while. A lot of 1s came up. But you can see that it's working. It's looping through our players, everything. It's adding the scores the way we want them to. So I'm going to go in and check a couple things, do some cleanup, And once we get done, I'll go ahead and condense this down by taking out all these in between things and see how many lines of code we actually have here. All right. So thanks for watching. Hopefully yours is working as well as mine. And once again, like I say, we'll do some cleanup and stuff in the next couple videos and get it looking nice and neat over here as well. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.